In the early 90s, R&B was in a golden era. You had groups like TLC, SWV, and Boyz II Men dominating the airwaves. Labels were investing big in acts that not only had the vocals but also had the look. And by look, we mean the industry's very specific idea of beauty and marketability. It was an image-first business where being talented wasn't always enough to get the spotlight. That's the world that Jermaine Dupri was stepping into as a young producer trying to make his mark. Jermaine discovered Xscape at a time when he was building his So So Def label from the ground up. The group had pipes for days, raw, unfiltered, church-honed vocals that could rival any of their peers. But according to Jermaine, when he brought them to labels and industry insiders, he was met with resistance. Not because they weren't good, but because they didn't look the part. And honestly, that part stings. As a fan of real talent and as a fan of real music, it's wild to think that a group with that much vocal power had to fight so hard for recognition just because they didn't fit the industry's narrow beauty standards. It makes you wonder how many other incredible acts never made it simply because they didn't fit the mold that somebody else created. I feel like talent should always speak louder than image. But back then, the game didn't work like that. And in a lot of ways, it still doesn't today. Jermaine Dupri straight up said that when he was shopping Xscape around in the early days, the biggest obstacle wasn't their talent, because that was already undeniable, but it was how they were perceived visually. He talked about how record execs and radio folk were hesitant to support the group, simply because they didn't fit the so-called video-ready standard. They weren't considered commercially attractive enough, and that made the come up way harder than it should have been. He even mentioned how people around him were saying things like, oh, they could sing, but they're not sexy, or are you sure that this is the group you want to bet on? And let's think about that for a second. Imagine being a producer who sees gold right in front of you, but having to convince an entire industry to look past their own biases just to give that gold a shot. And hearing that in 2025 really hits, because it's easy to look back and celebrate Xscape for their classics, but that success came at a cost, right? It shows how much gatekeeping there really was, and still is, based on shallow standards. And I really respect Jermaine Dupri for being transparent about that part of their journey.
No, not at all. Xscape was tough, and it was a hard group because, people didn't think they was cute. Biggie had made dreams of fucking an R&B bitch, and I fucked RuPaul before I fucked them ugly Xscape bitches. That was hard.
Right.
Right. I'm out here dealing with this, right? So I took a stand that was like, okay, y'all niggas think they ugly, cool. Find me somebody that can sing better than them, right? I start acting like just going off of their talent, pure talent. But yeah, it was hard. It wasn't, In Vogue was out at the time, right? So Xscape coming out when In Vogue is out, these little girls, they look like hood bitches and this to the dirt. They don't, that ain't flying.
No.
And I feel like the fact that this conversation is still relevant today really says a lot. It says everything about how far we still have to go, even though we have come a long way. And despite all the behind-the-scenes resistance, Xscape didn't fold. They leaned into their talent, their authenticity, and their bond as a group. And slowly but surely, they forced the industry to take notice. After Jermaine signed them to So So Def, Xscape dropped their debut album, Hummin' Coming At Ya, in 1993. The album went platinum, and suddenly the same industry folk who doubted them were now watching them climb the charts. But it wasn't just about the hits. It was more so about the way they presented themselves. They didn't try to conform to the image-heavy expectations. They rocked baggy clothes, kept it raw and relatable, and showed that you could be successful by yourself. They weren't trying to be the next In Vogue or TLC. They were carving their own lane, and that took a lot of courage. And I respect the hell out of Xscape for that. In an era where labels were really trying to mold artists into this cookie-cutter image, they said, nah, we're good. And I feel like that boldness really made them stand out even more. Sometimes it's not about fitting in. It's more so about making folks adjust to you and making folks look at you and say, hey, I exist too. And that's exactly what they did. Talent broke through all the noise. The voice became louder than the visual. Now that's a legacy move. But I mean, are things really that different now, or are we still playing by the same rules with new faces?
Good deal.
And an R&B group.
And an R&B group.
An R&B group.
Which
I never did before.
It was just purely because you just like, I fuck with them.
No. It was purely because I had thought about this once Crisscross blew up, that I didn't want to be pigeonholed in rap. And I didn't think I was the greatest rap producer.
Okay.
I didn't know what type of producer I thought I was, but I'm saying I didn't think that I could come right back with a successful rap record.
Your self-auditing is really
crazy.
100%.
Master
like that
auditor.
Is,
I told you, I'm telling you that master auditing is a thing.
That's the key.
Yeah.
Because most people don't know what they're good or bad at. And won't be honest with themselves to say, you know what, I'm probably not as good doing that.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm thinking I'm on the clock at this point too. So you got to start thinking when you're on the clock. Okay, you got Crisscross Day #1. You know the record's, it's gonna pass.
Yeah.
And then once it passes, the hype of who you are, what's going on, that's gonna pass, right? So I'm just like, no. And then I'm like, I don't want my label to be a rap label. I want my label to be all things, right? So I'm just like, shit, I'm gonna do an R&B group. Columbia didn't expect me to say I'm coming with R&B
they think
shit.
you gonna...
They like, what? An R&B group? I'm like, yeah. And they like, what R&B have you done? None. So we just gave this nigga a deal.
Here goes the kid now. This kid.
Go do some shit he never did before. He can really fuck the money up.
I already know what that meeting was like.
What? So you gave the kid how much money? He doing what with it?
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah. I mean, I went in the studio at Xscape. So we started working on the Xscape album. I did a whole album in 2 weeks.
The Hummer coming at you album?
Yeah.
So it's not a conscious thing. You just making the music.
Yeah, but I'm writing the songs. I mean, you know what I mean? Like I'm really, really trying to get this group out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm really like, the label ain't told me nothing. I'm just on this clock of myself and I'm like, man, let's go. I gotta go. And nothing about me thinking about writing the songs even popped in my head that I couldn't. I just started writing. And Manuel played something, and I'm like, nah, I wanted to go like this. And I was trying to make it so close to rap. That's why it's Just Kicking It sound like it sound.
Yeah.
And that's why it's called Just Kicking It, because I'm writing it like it's rap, right? And I'm starting to think about like, I'm starting to fuck with girls too, right? So I'm fucking with girls, so I got a little education of how niggas fuck with girls. So my first mindset was every man want a woman. They could cook them up a good meal. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm thinking like what a nigga want from a girl, not what a girl want from. Right. So I wrote it from that perspective, and people was like, "She talking from the man perspective." I'm like, yeah, that's how I wrote it.
And that's why I connected the way I did.
But I thought, I didn't think that was gonna work at all. I'm writing all them songs.
Xscape was gonna work?
Not big, because I'm writing the songs, and I know that I don't have no chops in R&B.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'm just praying.
But are you seeing the sparkle in people's eye?
No.
No.
Not at all. Xscape was tough, man. It was a hard group because, people didn't think they was cute. Biggie had made dreams of fucking an R&B bitch, and I fucked RuPaul before I fucked them ugly Xscape bitches. That was hard.
But here's my thing. As you're going through the progressions, outside looking in, the shit was working.
It was working in my hood. That's what I'm saying. Like
where I lived, that shit was working.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Wherever you had like younger radio stations that were, but like say for instance in Atlanta, V103 was not hip hop and R&B. That wasn't their slogan.
Right.
We played the hits, R&B hits, right? Xscape. I mean, we broke. We got it. We got a number one record. We got a number one record, and it got going. But I remember this to the day, because every group that I got also, excuse me, I told my dad he was gonna manage them, right? Mm-hmm. My dad is managing Xscape, right? And he called me. He was like, "Man, the song number one." I'm like, "It don't feel number one to me."
Was it secret? You mean?
No, just kicking it.
Just kicking it.
I'm like, it don't feel number one to me. Like, I know what a number one record feel like. Crisscross is number one record. Just don't feel like that.
So the difference between a number one record and a smash record.
Oh, yeah, it's a big difference.
Big difference.
Yeah. Big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. Yeah. But I was just like...
This is all you know at this point.
Yeah, that's all I know.
Yeah, you just coming off that.
Yeah, that's all I know. And I was happy that Xscape had a number one record. Then I think Understanding went number one. So we had 2 number one records off that album.
The bigger question is this. Has the industry really evolved when it comes to how artists are judged? I mean, on one hand, today it seems like there's more room for individuality. We got artists who are breaking barriers in how they look, sound, and express themselves. And social media gives artists direct access to fans without needing the label's approval. But even with all that progress, let's be honest, image still plays a big part. We still see artists getting more shine, not necessarily because they're more talented, but because they fit a certain aesthetic. Labels still put their marketing dollars behind a look before they invest in a voice. And, we got platforms like TikTok and Instagram that have opened a lot of doors for many people. And they've also created a new beauty standard and new pressure. It's not as blatant as it was back then, but the bias is still there. I think we're better, but we're not quite there yet. I think the fact that Xscape's story still resonates in 2025 says a lot. We've made progress, But talent alone still doesn't guarantee success. There's still this unspoken rule in the industry that marketability has a face, and if you don't fit it, your grind is going to be 10 times harder. I feel like that's why it's so important to support artists who bring something different to the table, because real art doesn't need filters. And despite everything stacked against them, Xscape won, and their story still echoes today. They made a mark on the industry that still felt. Multiple platinum albums, chart-topping singles, and a loyal fan base that has held them down for decades. Each member went on to build their own lane. These women have proved that longevity isn't just for the pretty, it's for the real. And they were real from day one. To me, Xscape's story represents a blueprint. They didn't wait for the industry to accept them. They demanded respect by showing up with unmatched talent and staying true to who they were. Now that's a legacy. And it's proof that while image might open doors, substance is what keeps you in the room. Their journey is a reminder that artists who don't fit the mold still have the power to bend it or break it altogether. So salute to Jermaine Dupri for telling the truth, and major love to Xscape for not letting the industry define them. They define themselves, and in doing so, they help change the game. If you rock with this kind of storytelling, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite Xscape song, and let's keep the conversation going.